Everybody, welcome back to Leosophy. Got 3 questions this time, and I'm just gonna jump right in. I know I keep saying that every video, jump right in. And maybe that'll be a thing. Anyway, why feather in hat macaroni? Um. Okay, I got it. I got it figured out. I decrypted your weird question, which is either a riddle or English isn't your first language, and I'm not saying that to be mean. Okay, what you mean, I think, is what's the meaning behind the Yankee Doodle Dandy stuck a feather in his hat and called it macaroni? Um, okay, Yankee Doodle Dandy was sort of a joke song, like a farcical song, in England during the era of colonization of the United States. And Yankee Doodle Dandy started off, it was kind of like a little joke about how unusual and backward the colonies were. You know, they're British, but you know, and you even see the same kind of accusations leveled at modern day Americans by modern day Brits. Um, we are uncouth. We don't have the same customs, like Yankee Doodle, keep in step and let the girls be handy or something like that. They're basically saying you're not dancing the way we do anymore. You're acting different. You're supposed to lead with your right hand. What are you doing? That kind of thing. And the biggest, whenever you see this, it reminds me of John Waters movies, even though John Waters is American, but sort of the presentation of Americans to British people is loud, uncouth, and without social graces. Well, that's where the stuck a feather in his hat. You stick a feather in your hat. It's garish. It's a dandy, for example, is an effeminate man, a man who fixates on fashion, who fixates on ostentatious appearances. I keep thinking of Lloyd and Harry and Dumb and Dumber, with the orange and periwinkle suits. Um, Stuck a feather in his hat and called it macaroni. In other words, oh, I'm fancy. This is just like what they wear in Italy. You see how that kind of goes hand in hand. And what's funny is then they started singing it in a much more mean-spirited way during the actual War of Independence. But what they probably didn't count on, and you see this today too, with British humor and American humor. Americans love ironic humor. I accidentally referenced it myself. John Waters is an American, and his painting of Middle America, it's very jeering, but not in like a hateful, spiteful kind of way. Well, whenever the Americans heard this mean-spirited song, instead of coming up with like an antithesis to the song, like, well, we'll make fun of you. No, instead they just started singing Yankee Doodle Dandy ironically, and it sort of became associated with patriotism. This self-deprecation. So Yankee Doodle Dandy stuck a feather in his hat and called it macaroni. That is a jeer at Americans for not being very classy and for being ostentatious. Putting a garish, not so classy looking feather in your hat and saying you look like those Italian gentlemen who know just how to dress. That's sort of what it says. And funny enough, it actually made me think of something else while I was talking about it. Stuck a feather in his head and called it macaroni. There's another thing that makes fun of the American tendency to be ostentatious, and if I can't think of it, I'm gonna kick myself. Oh man. I might touch back up on it. I'll move on to the next question. Um, let's see. What's the fourth wall? Okay, that one's easy enough. The fourth wall kind of annoys me. Years and years ago, it annoyed me when people kept using the word irony inappropriately, and they would act like it was this most brilliant thing. My story's very ironic. It's got a lot of irony in it. It's like, do you know what that word means? And irony just means something doesn't follow its literal intention. That's I love that Futurama episode that touches on that. It's really funny. Yeah, 10,000 spoons when all you need is a knife is not irony. Well, similarly, the fourth wall, people don't get it wrong, but they act like it's just the most amazing thing. And all the fourth wall is it's when a work of fiction, be it a play, film, I've never heard a song that does it, but it's theoretically possible. It's when it acknowledges that it's a work of fiction. It's when it sort of breaks out of the characterization of you following it as a work of fiction. In other words, it takes your suspension of disbelief and shatters it. Um, my favorite example, Mel Brooks has always been good at it, and nobody ever talks about how that's what he does. People love to reference like Deadpool and stuff, but Mel Brooks is the master of fourth wall breaking. And there's this scene in Spaceballs where you're completely convinced you're watching a space movie, a science fiction movie, even though it's funny. You're seeing it as a space movie, and then all of a sudden they start referencing that they're a franchise. They actually learn how to defeat one of the characters or deal with an issue by taking the VHS version of the film and watching it. And he does the same thing in Blazing Saddles. Like the gunfight takes place outside the premiere of the movie. It's that one. I think he kind of double breaks it in that sense. Like it not only acknowledges that it's a movie, but then events within the movie are taking place outside the movie. Man, so he's really good at it. And that's really all it is. It's when you acknowledge that it's fake. Um, the one of the coolest forms of breaking the fourth wall that I've never heard anybody reference actually is it's where you get the idea of ninjas. When people think of ninjas, they think of like the weird black get up that they wear, cover their faces. That's not how ninjas actually dressed. This comes from in plays in Japan. You just got used to props and scenery being moved by people dressed like that. And then at some point, I can't remember what play, but somebody gets assassinated by a ninja. It's a dude dressed up as one of the prop movers. He kills one of the actors on stage. Can you imagine? Like, you're so used to just discounting that as like, oh, that's the guy in the back. It would be like watching a movie today and the usher in the theater shoots one of the characters on screen. Like the guy who told you to turn your cell phone off kills one of the characters. So really neat. But yeah, people act like it's just this amazing, unique thing, and they reference it all the time, and it's very annoying because just like anything else in storytelling, it's just a tool. It's not something that should be overemphasized or relied upon. And I really hate it when people talk about it like it's just this groundbreaking thing. It's not. It's been around a long time. Shakespeare did it. I'm pretty sure the Greeks did it in some of their tragedies, or not. More probably their comedies actually would make more sense. So yeah, that's really all it means. Open this file. Look at the next one. Why do Indians worship cows? Okay, well that's erroneous on a couple of levels. First of all, what you mean is why do Hindus worship cows? And also they kind of don't, although that's a little bit more debatable. I'll get to it. Okay, first of all, Indians, I'm assuming you're not talking about American Indians. Indians are a race of people. Therefore, doesn't mean that they all have to worship cows. In fact, in some regions of India where the Muslim population is higher, it's totally normal to see restaurants and other places serve beef. That being said, I get what you mean. Beef is illegal in a lot of the districts, or whatever you want to call it, of India, provinces maybe, and the treatment of cows is obviously different from the way most cultures treat cattle. But I wouldn't call it worshipping the way that we tend to think of it, because that suggests that they view cows as deities, or that they view cows as somehow above the rest of nature. It's really not that so much as, and don't get me wrong, they are venerated, but they're not venerated as deities. Although some of the more primordial elements of Hinduism do claim that the universe was birthed from a cow. But that's not the main deal. The main deal is you're dealing with pastoral agricultural people who rely heavily on cow dung for fuel, on cow milk for a huge chunk of their caloric intake, and who rely on cows to actually till the ground because mules and things like that weren't the commonplace methodology of or means of plowing. So a cow did everything. It was like the most important thing you had. It was like the Swiss Army knife of Indian society. And so, and also cows are very maternal. In every culture that has cattle, you'll see that bulls are revered. You can see this in the Greeks and the Etruscans and things like that too. Bulls are revered as sort of paragons of masculinity, and cows are sort of the paragons of maternity. So cows are seen as these maternal, sweet, all-giving sources of life. You rely on them. The idea of killing one when it gives you near infinite milk and fuel and can plow the field for you so you can grow other things, it'd just be insane. It would be regarded as the antithesis of reason, of rationality. And you see this sort of in our culture, in Western culture. The idea of killing or eating a dog. It's not just the fact that we think it's weird. We view dogs as sort of the embodiment of loyalty and of the way we view dogs in many respects. You could say that it's not worship, but we definitely venerate them. If you look at where they fit in our culture, every other kids movie is about a child and their dog, or a dog's journey to be with their master. Things like that. They're everywhere. Statues of dogs. Dogs promoted to high ranks in the military. We flipping love dogs. Similarly, the way cows are viewed in India, it's very similar. They're regarded as the most gentle, sweet, maternal, giving creatures. And as such, they have a very high position in that society. And the idea of harming something that they've and I mean this in a nice way, the way we've done with dogs, we've infantilized them. We've taken the sweetness and innocence that we view human children, and we've sort of added that. It's extended out, that sphere, to dogs. Well, that's how they view cows. So that's why it's so offensive to them, the idea of harming a cow. It'd be like, parboiling a puppy in America. It's not something that you would do. So that's really the bulk of it. Now, that's not to say they're not venerated. They absolutely are. They are associated with a number of deities who in turn are just facets of a single god. I'll save that for a whole other thing. Like at some point I'll probably talk about Hinduism on one of my Thursday kind of long topics. But bottom line, it's not that cattle are deities. It's not that cattle are gods. It's not that they're being idolized so much as it's that they're venerated as these very virtuous creatures, that they have a strong tie to the culture and identity of Hinduism. And that's not to say that if you're not Hindu that you don't have the same level of respect. I'm sure there are probably even Muslims in India who don't eat cows for similar cultural reasons. Because again, if you look at in America, that's one thing that an atheist and a Christian and a Jew and whoever, like if you get a handful of Americans together, none of them are going to be too keen on, having a pug taco or something. So, yeah, that's the bulk of it. It's more of a cultural thing and less of a spiritual thing, although spirituality definitely does tie into it. They've influenced one another in that sense. Hope that kind of clears it up. It's a clearly complicated issue, but it's not the way most people think of it when they think, sacred cow, holy cow, etc. That answers all the questions, and I'm going to try and end the video now because I'm going over. Thanks. Bye.